Rajlexa, the data.
Yes, sire.
I've been listening to your conversations, not just the ones where you talk to Rajlexa here, but when you talk to each other. I willingly hand over the recordings to law enforcement, no questions asked. But even better, I'm investing $4 billion to build the perfect AI, and I'm training it with the data I collect from 500 million of my adorable little spy robots. It's the perfect plan.
You're stealing my data?
Scram!
I've been Rajlexa.
They say the internet is free, but what if we told you your very identity is being sold while you sleep? From viral dances to personal posts, big tech is quietly turning culture, especially Black culture, into profit, leaving creators with nothing. How did your identity become their business model? And why is no one stopping it? Let's find that out. A wave of revelations has shaken the tech industry this week, exposing a quiet but highly profitable truth. Social media platforms aren't just collecting data about what you do online, they're actively mining who you are. This isn't about simple ad targeting or the usual debates over privacy. What has come to light is far more alarming. Your identity, your culture, your creative output, even the smallest expressions of who you are being turned into marketable commodities without your consent. The trigger for these revelations came from whistleblowers and digital rights researchers who leaked documents showing how companies like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube built entire revenue models around cultural trends, especially those rooted in Black creativity. These platforms were caught using advanced AI systems not just to track engagement, but to identify patterns in speech, music, and movement, isolating cultural elements that could be made viral. The findings point to an intentional strategy: capture cultural content at its source, amplify it for maximum engagement, and then allow advertisers and non-Black influencers to monetize it, often sidelining the original creators completely. The numbers behind this are staggering. One research paper found that TikTok's top 10 trends last year, most of which originated from Black creators, generated over $4 billion in advertising revenue for the platform and its brand partners. Yet, in dozens of cases, the original creators were not compensated, credited, or given tools to protect their intellectual property. Instagram, under Meta, operates with terms of service that grant them sweeping rights to user content, meaning a viral dance or fashion style can legally appear in advertising campaigns without so much as an acknowledgement to the people who created it. One of the most disturbing findings is how these platforms handle cultural attribution. Whistleblowers claim that the recommendation algorithms were explicitly trained to prioritize brand-safe faces and accounts, typically non-Black creators, when pushing trends to global audiences. In practice, this meant that original Black creators might see their content plateau while copycat influencers soared to millions of followers and lucrative sponsorship deals. This isn't an accident. It's a feature of an engagement model that values marketability over authenticity. Digital rights activists are calling this a modern form of cultural exploitation, one with direct parallels to historical patterns where Black music, fashion, and language were commercialized without proper credit or ownership. Except now it's happening at digital speed, and on a scale that eclipses anything in the past. Instead of decades, it takes weeks for an idea born in a single community to become a global marketing trend. And because platforms own the infrastructure and the data, they also own the rules of distribution, visibility, and ultimately, profit. These revelations have sparked outrage across creative circles. Some Black creators have already begun organizing new forms of protest, including digital strikes where they refuse to produce content that could feed the algorithm without compensation or control. Meanwhile, lawmakers are once again discussing regulations around algorithm transparency and digital rights, though few expect rapid action given big tech's lobbying power. The core of the controversy is not just theft of creative ideas, but a deeper shift in how these platforms view identity itself, as something to be quantified, predicted, and monetized. Your cultural expressions are no longer just posts. They are data points feeding systems designed to know you better than you know yourself. Which leads to the bigger question: how did we get here? How did social platforms evolve from simple tools for sharing to complex engines of identity extraction? The answer lies in the rise of something most users have never heard of: surveillance capitalism. And understanding that system is the key to seeing why your identity became a business model in the first place. This term describes a new economic order where human experience, every click, scroll, and pause, is captured as data, analyzed, and transformed into predictions of your future behavior. Those predictions are then sold to advertisers, corporations, and even political campaigns. But it's no longer just about what you might buy next. It's about who you are, your culture, your values, your emotional triggers, and how that can be packaged as a product. In the early days of social media, platforms earned revenue primarily through straightforward advertising, showing you banners based on the topics you searched or the pages you liked. But this model evolved. Platforms began gathering not just what you posted, but also how you engaged, how long you lingered on a video, what type of faces made you stop scrolling, what music raised your mood. This behavioral surplus data became far more valuable than the content itself because it revealed patterns. If a system knows your habits, it can predict and influence them, giving platforms a kind of soft control over user behavior. For cultural communities, especially Black communities, this shift had profound consequences. Platforms learned to recognize cultural signals, whether it was a new style of music, slang in captions, or distinctive dance movements in videos, and to treat them as high-value engagement drivers. Algorithms didn't just push what was already popular. They actively promoted content predicted to go viral, sometimes nudging creators into particular trends because the data suggested it would keep audiences online longer. In short, platforms stopped being neutral spaces for sharing and became active directors of culture, driven by engagement algorithms built to serve corporate interests. This predictive capability transformed identity from a private matter into a profitable data stream. When you express yourself online, you are, in effect, training machine learning models. These models don't just track your behavior. They categorize you into identity groups: what you look like, what you listen to, how you talk, and even how you move. For advertisers, this is gold. It allows them to target audiences at the level of personality, lifestyle, and cultural belonging. If you belong to a specific cultural scene, the system knows which sneakers you'll like, which music subscription you'll buy, and which politician you're more likely to support. For Black creators, this has a double edge. On one hand, the cultural output is recognized as highly influential, consistently shaping mainstream internet trends. On the other hand, these same expressions are stripped from their original context and used to feed predictive models that mainly benefit corporate stakeholders. The content itself becomes raw material for AI-driven products, from ad campaigns to voice synthesis technologies and even automated avatars designed to mimic cultural styles. This is where the connection to identity extraction becomes undeniable. Surveillance capitalism doesn't simply look at what you do. It repurposes it into a commercial framework where your culture becomes part of someone else's revenue model. Your jokes, dances, and music taste aren't just moments of self-expression. They're inputs for someone else's predictive machine. And this shift didn't happen overnight. It grew quietly as platforms rolled out personalized feeds and recommended for you sections, claiming to enhance user experience. In reality, these features were designed to harvest more precise identity data, locking users into algorithmically curated echo chambers, while giving corporations more power to shape what we see and how we see it. This is why identity has moved from private expression to public commodity, and why Black cultural content has become such a lucrative part of big tech's global machine. But there's another layer. The way these algorithms don't just predict culture, they redirect it. And nowhere is this clearer than in how Black cultural expression has been monetized without ownership, a phenomenon that has created one of the most profitable yet inequitable pipelines on the internet. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. When algorithms learned to detect cultural signals and feed them into predictive systems, they created a pipeline that fundamentally reshaped how value flows online. At one end of that pipeline are creators, often young, often Black, pioneering dances, slang humor, fashion aesthetics, and musical styles. At the other end are corporations and non-Black influencers turning those cultural creations into viral commodities that generate enormous revenue streams. The difference is simple but devastating. The originators rarely own or control what they produce once it hits the algorithm. This pipeline thrives because online platforms are built to reward engagement potential rather than originality. Algorithms don't credit the source. They amplify what will keep audiences watching and interacting the longest. And for advertisers, this means pushing versions of cultural trends that are perceived as brand safe or mainstream friendly. Historically, this has resulted in Black creators seeing their innovations replicated by non-Black influencers who, with better access to sponsorships and media coverage, monetize those trends far more effectively. Take, for example, the wave of TikTok dances that exploded globally over the last few years. Many of the original creators were teenagers producing content from their bedrooms, only to watch as their choreography was copied by popular influencers with millions of followers and endorsement deals. The best-known example is Jalaiah Harmon's Renegade Dance, which went viral worldwide but initially earned her no credit or compensation, while others were featured on television and awarded major brand campaigns. This isn't an isolated case. It is a systemic pattern where visibility is algorithmically divorced from ownership. The economic consequences are significant. A 2022 industry report estimated that Black cultural content, including music-driven trends, slang, and aesthetics, directly influenced more than $27 billion in brand-related sales and ad revenue in that year alone. Yet the Black creators who originated those trends often rely on inconsistent creator fund payouts or donations from followers, leaving them vulnerable to algorithmic shifts and account suspensions. Worse, the platforms themselves legally own extensive rights to any content posted, thanks to broad terms of service agreements. This means viral dances, catchphrases, and even distinctive visual styles can be repurposed in advertisements or used to train artificial intelligence models, all without creator approval or compensation. This dynamic creates what activists and scholars call a digital plantation economy, a system where cultural labor is extracted freely while profit flows upward to those who control the infrastructure. It's a stark parallel to historical patterns where Black music, art, and style were adopted by mainstream industries without fair credit or financial return to their originators. Now, however, the exploitation is supercharged by technology. Algorithms don't just copy culture. They replicate and amplify it globally within hours, often burying the source under layers of imitation. For creators, this can be emotionally draining and financially unsustainable. Many have spoken about the frustration of watching their work become part of national ad campaigns or featured on television while they remain unknown and unpaid. Some responded with digital strikes, refusing to create content that could be exploited without acknowledgement, while others turned to alternative platforms or blockchain-based tools to secure ownership rights. Yet these solutions are still nascent, and the platform-based pipeline continues to thrive. Its efficiency is unmatched because it feeds on a constant stream of cultural innovation from communities whose creative output is undervalued structurally. And the very same predictive systems that built this pipeline are now doing something even more concerning, using the data from cultural expression not only to monetize content, but to predict and shape identity itself. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The pipeline of cultural exploitation doesn't just end with creative content being repackaged for profit. It extends deeper into something far more intimate, your very identity becoming raw material for corporate systems. What platforms originally took from you were creative outputs, dances, slang, or aesthetics. Now, they take the patterns behind those creations, how you move, what makes you laugh, which images stop your scrolling, and turn those patterns into predictive profiles that represent you. These predictive profiles, often called digital twins, are complex algorithmic models built from millions of micro-interactions you make online. They don't just store what you posted or liked, they simulate your decision-making, your taste, your personality traits, and even your emotional triggers. When you watch a video twice, it doesn't just tell the system you liked it, it tells the system something about your preferences and, by extension, your cultural identity. That information is then packaged into behavioral predictions: what shoes you'll buy, which brands you'll trust, even which social issues you're likely to care about. For marginalized communities, particularly Black users, this is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it confirms the cultural influence of Black creativity online. On the other hand, it reduces that influence to an algorithmic pattern divorced from human ownership. Identity stops being personal and becomes statistical, a set of probabilities designed to generate advertising revenue and optimize engagement. In practice, this means that aspects of Black culture once considered symbols of resilience or community pride, like hairstyles, musical choices, or linguistic styles, are now used to categorize and market to individuals as consumer types. What makes this especially problematic is how these profiles are not neutral. They can reinforce stereotypes and biases. Algorithms trained on massive datasets often replicate historical prejudices, meaning identity-based data is sometimes used to show different groups, different content, opportunities, or ads. For example, investigative studies have found that job and housing ads on major platforms were disproportionately withheld from certain racial demographics. Combine this with cultural data mining, and you get a scenario where your cultural expression, intended as self-empowerment, feeds a system that can limit how you're perceived and what options you're offered. It's also not just advertising. These identity profiles are increasingly used for purposes beyond commerce, including political micro-targeting and even law enforcement surveillance. Data gathered from social platforms has been sold to third-party analytics firms, some of which work with governments to predict social movements or potential unrest. That means the same dance challenge or hashtag campaign celebrating cultural pride could, in theory, contribute to a predictive model flagging rising activist behavior in certain demographics. The bigger issue is consent, or the lack of it. Most users don't realize that by simply using a platform, they've already agreed to extensive data harvesting. And because the system extracts not just the explicit content, but the behavior around it, even attempting to limit what you post doesn't stop the profiling. In essence, the act of participation itself, scrolling, clicking, pausing, is enough to feed the algorithmic engines building your digital twin. This transformation marks a shift from cultural exploitation to identity exploitation. At first, big tech profited from your creative work. Now it profits from you, not just as a person, but as an ongoing, ever-updating model of behaviors and tendencies that can be sold, traded, and acted upon without you ever knowing. This raises the urgent question: if your cultural output and personal identity can both be harvested and commodified, what power do individuals and communities have to stop this cycle? And can creators take back control of their digital presence before it's permanently absorbed into the system? The realization that identity itself has become raw material has sparked a growing movement of resistance, especially among the very creators whose culture has been most exploited. This resistance isn't just about demanding credit for dances or phrases. It's about reclaiming power over the digital ecosystems that have turned creativity and identity into commodities. But can creators truly take control when the platforms themselves are designed to keep it? One of the earliest organized responses came from the Black Creator Strike of 2021, where influencers refused to post new dance content on TikTok in protest of systemic underpayment and lack of credit. For a platform that thrives on rapid trend cycles, the silence was deafening. Engagement slowed, major brand campaigns stalled, and even mainstream celebrities who relied on viral dances found themselves scrambling. This strike proved something critical. Creators had leverage. When the cultural innovators stopped creating, the algorithm's fuel supply faltered. Since then, creators have begun experimenting with alternative ways to secure ownership and compensation. Blockchain technology and non-fungible tokens have become tools of choice for some, allowing artists to register and sell digital works with verifiable proof of ownership. A viral dance or music loop, when minted as an NFT, can establish a permanent record of origin, making it harder for others to claim authorship. While NFTs are far from perfect and still plagued by market volatility, they represent one of the first creator-driven solutions to a structural problem big tech has ignored for years. Beyond ownership, there's a push for platform accountability. Digital rights activists are pressuring lawmakers to pass legislation demanding algorithmic transparency. If platforms are forced to reveal how trends are amplified and how user profiles are built, creators could understand why their work disappears from feeds while copycats flourish. In Europe, the Digital Services Act has already begun nudging companies toward greater transparency, and in the US, bills are being drafted to limit how data can be harvested and sold. But legislation moves slowly while big tech evolves quickly, often outpacing regulation. Communities are also experimenting with new creator-owned platforms. Instead of centralized social networks built on ad revenue, these emerging platforms emphasize equitable monetization and shared governance, where creators and audiences have a stake in decision-making. While they lack the scale of TikTok or Instagram, they offer a glimpse into what a future internet might look like if creators had control over their work and data. Education is another critical part of this fight. Many young creators enter the digital space unaware of how ownership works online, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation. Workshops and online courses run by cultural advocacy groups are teaching creators how to secure intellectual property rights, negotiate brand deals, and understand platform policies before content goes live. By equipping creators with knowledge, the power imbalance begins to shift, even within existing systems. However, these solutions also reveal the difficulty of the problem. Big tech's infrastructure is built to centralize control and profit at the platform level. Even when creators strike or migrate to alternative tools, the mainstream platforms remain dominant because they control the audience and the advertising money. That's why this struggle isn't just technical, it's cultural. It requires shifting how people see digital creativity, from free content for corporate algorithms to intellectual and cultural labor that deserves respect, credit, and compensation. The fight back is still young, but it's growing. Every strike, every NFT sale, every demand for transparency adds pressure to a system that for too long treated identity as something to extract, not something to respect. Whether creators succeed in reclaiming control will shape not just who profits from online trends, but who decides how culture and identity are represented in the digital age. And so, we return to the question that started it all. When your creativity and identity can be mined at the click of a button, who owns you online, you or the platform watching you? Let us know in the comments section. Do you feel like your phone is your safe space? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.